I'll go ahead and call the meeting to order. It's I've got 7:01, so we're a minute late getting started tonight. But I want to say welcome and thank you all for being here and participating in this process. As I've told many of you, this is passed and voted on by our citizens and passed back in May of this year. It is this year, isn't it? And so we began the redistricting process 2 months ago with Gunnar. We'll talk about that in a minute. And people are, asking a lot of questions. We'll try to answer as many as we can tonight. They will, and we'll answer what we can about this process. But I always forget. I'm Stan Pickett, mayor here. We also have our mayor pro tem, Dan Alleman, our deputy mayor pro tem, Tandy Burrows, Councilman Archer, Bruce Archer, Councilman Nicolo in the back. I believe that Councilman Noche and Casper both had other engagements tonight. I'd heard from them earlier this week. But, this redistricting process, as we keep thinking, what are we doing and what's going on and all that. Somebody I missed? No, okay. Really is what you see in a lot of other cities throughout Texas and throughout the country, single member representation. Right now, and you'll hear about this a little bit later, you can vote for anybody in the city, but you have to live in a geographical district. For years, our charters allowed us to divide up and have somewhat representation, north, south, east, and west, somewhat, but yet everyone voted for everyone throughout the city. And as you'll hear tonight, with the single member representation, the people that live in a geographic area that will be decided at some point in first or second meeting, probably the second meeting in November, I believe is when we have a chance to vote on this. The people that live in that district that are registered to vote will be electing that representative. And so you will have a person in that area that you vote for, not citywide. And of course, the mayor continues to be at large and will be the only position voted on by our folks. And we had some good questions, and I know you'll have some good questions tonight. And we encourage you in a few minutes, we'll kind of give you the ground rules, but we encourage you to think of your questions, write them down if you need to, and then bring them forward. We'll do the best we can to answer them as we get into that process a little later on. Couple of things, housekeeping items. I think the facilities are right here down the hallway. We are videotaping these, and they're not live, but we are videotaping. So we have microphones. If you do have a question or a comment, we'd ask that you come to the microphone so we can have it recorded. And that's just so that other people can see. And they may have the same questions you do, and they may have the same concerns you do. So therefore, we want them to be able to hear that as they look at it later on. Anything I left out, guys? Okay. With that, I'll introduce Gunnar Seaquest. He's partner at Bickerstaff, Heath, Delgado, and Acosta. And I say that right, Acosta, right? Yeah. All right, I got it right. And they're going to come up and do the bulk of the presentation, and I'll be back a little later when we start the open public comments. Thank you. Good to see you.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Good evening, council members, members of the public. As the mayor said, my name is Gunnar Seaquest, and I'm with the firm of Bickerstaff, Heath, Delgado, and Acosta. And one of the things we do is we assist cities in their redistricting needs. When a city either needs to rebalance their districts, or in the case of Mesquite, when the citizens have come out in a charter amendment election and have voted to transition the election system from an at-large system, and we'll talk a little bit more about that, to a single-member district system, we assist cities in figuring out what the districts are going to look like. The decision to go to 6 single-member districts has already been made, as the mayor said. That's been by the vote of the citizens of Mesquite. But the question that we are assisting with, and that we are soliciting input from the community here about tonight, is what are your thoughts on what those districts should look like? Go to the first slide there. So the purpose of the meeting tonight is I'm just going to give you a little bit of background information, kind of how we've gotten here, what are the steps going forward, how will this process play out. I'll talk to you a little bit about how we've come up with the example maps. Hopefully everyone has had an opportunity as they've come in to view the blow-up boards. Those boards show the example districts, both as a single district as well as the whole map that is an example right now. We also have on the table over here large printout copies of that. If anybody hasn't got one, I invite you to do so. just because it's a good 11 by 17 size map and has some demographic information on it as well. So I'll talk a little bit about how we came up with the example for the city council to designate as what's called an illustrative plan, which is what we're presenting here to you folks tonight. As it sounds, an illustrative plan is just that. It's an example. It's by no means set in stone. It's not final. The council can change it. And that's part of the purpose of coming here tonight, to get you all's input is in their consideration as they move towards adopting what will ultimately be a final plan, and coming up with any changes that may be necessary for that process. And so what we're here for tonight, after I speak a little bit, I'm going to turn it over and invite folks to come up and comment at the microphone about the plans that we're presenting here tonight, to give your input, to give thoughts that you think it's helpful for us to know as the consultants, or for the council to know. They're here to hear that as well. Also, for folks who don't have an opportunity or aren't prepared to speak tonight, you can submit written comments to the city secretary's office. I'll talk a little bit more about that. And if you're so inclined and want to draw your own plan, you'll have an opportunity to do that, to submit to the city secretary's office, which can then be, we'll evaluate it as a consultant and can be considered by the council as well. So lots of opportunity throughout this process for public input and comment. Go to the next slide. So this is a picture that is probably familiar to all of you. This is the electoral system for the city of Mesquite as it existed prior to the charter amendment election. As the mayor said, there are 4 residential districts under the old system. In order to run for a council position under the old system, you actually had to live, at least for these 4 seats, in one of those residential districts. But the electoral system was actually an at-large system, because citizens from all over the city of Mesquite could vote for any or all of the residential districts. Now, there were also, in addition to these 4 residential districts, there were 2 at-large seats that were not limited to a specific geographic area, and where the candidate could run from anywhere within the city and was elected at large. And of course, the mayor's office, or the mayor, is elected at large as well. Under the new system, well, we'll go back to that in a minute. Under the new system, actually, will you go forward for me one more? One more. Let's see the map. There we go. Under the new system, there will be 6 single-member districts. The main change here, obviously, is that candidates wanting to run for council out of any one of the 6 districts will have to reside in that district. And then the major change will be that in order to vote for any of those candidates, you'll actually have to live in the district for the candidate for which you are voting for. And so the 6 single-member districts will be elected from and by voters in the particular district from which they run. The mayor's office, of course, will continue to be filled at large. All right. Let's go back one slide, please. Let's actually go back 2 slides. I'm sorry. One more of the timeline. So this is just a general timeline. I want folks to kind of understand what the timing of this process is. The charter amendment election took place back in May. The results were announced in June. In August, we started working with the council on the redistricting process. We initially came up with a plan that we presented to the council, which the council then had an opportunity to make some changes to in September. And that plan was ultimately designated as the illustrative plan, which is the plan that we are presenting to you folks tonight. The next step is what we're doing here tonight, which is the public input process. We had one meeting on Tuesday up in North Mesquite, and then we're having this second meeting today in order to solicit comments from the public. We're also, as I said, going to offer citizens the opportunity to submit their comments in writing. And once we have all of that information, our firm will do an analysis of it, present it back to the council, and then at November 5th, we'll have a summary report of all of the citizen input for the council to consider. At that point, if there are any changes that need to be made to the example plan that we're looking at tonight, the council will have an opportunity to do that. And currently, we are scheduled to have a final adoption of the plan by November 19th, the council meeting at November 19th. I want to tell everyone here that both the meeting on November 5th as well as the meeting on November 19th, where the plan will be adopted, those will be public, regular city council meetings where the public can attend and provide input as well. Ultimately, once those plans are adopted, that information will be transmitted over to the county clerk's office, and the first election that will take place under this new system once these maps are adopted will be in November of 2019. So we're going to get everything done and adopted this year, but the first election won't be until next November under the new districts that are adopted. So how do we come up with the districts that we draw that we've presented for you folks here today? Well, there's some criteria that the City Council has adopted to guide this process, and they're listed here. The first is when we're drawing these districts and to set the boundaries, we try wherever possible to follow easily identifiable geographic boundaries. What does that mean? That means major roadways, major geographic features such as creeks. We have used creeks in a couple of instances. We sometimes will follow voting precinct lines, which I'll talk about it again in a minute. But basically what we try to do is follow established roadways so that we end up with the best possible shaped district as we can get. We try to follow practical voting precincts. What that means is we try not to split voting precincts among the single member districts that we draw. The city doesn't set where the voting precincts are. The county does that. And so the city has to the best of its ability, try to follow the voting precinct lines where we can. What does that mean? It doesn't mean that everybody in one district will be in one voting precinct. What it does mean is we try not to have one voting precinct voters have to go to one voting precinct to vote in two different geographic or single member districts. I'll tell you that's not always possible just based on the distribution of population. Every once in a while we'll have to split a district, a voting precinct, but that is always our goal, to not split voting precincts wherever possible. The other important thing that we look at is the total population. Federal law tells us, the one person, one vote rule tells us that the total population of the single member districts that we draw have to be substantially the same, which is to say we have to balance population among them. When we had the residential districts, when we took a look at the demographics, the residential districts that existed before, where there were 4 of them, involved about 36,000 people per district. When we go down to 6, or we go up to 6 single member districts, you're looking at a average population of about 25,000 people per district. And what we do is we make sure that there is no greater than an overall 10% deviation between the most populous district and the least populous district, so that we make sure that everybody is within 10% deviation, and so they're fairly well balanced among themselves. We also, and I think you'll see in the map that we presented and the council has designated and worked on, we try to get as clean a shape, compact and contiguous districts as possible. We don't want stringy districts. We don't want particularly abnormally shaped districts. It's not the case, unfortunately, that we can ever get purely geometric shapes, but we try to get as close to that as we can. We also make sure that they're contiguous. We don't want a district that starts one place, skips over somewhere else, and then picks up. We want to have them being wholly contiguous along the way. And so when you look at the districts that we have done, you will see that. I will tell you, there's a little bit of an exception in District 6, because there are some areas in that district that are actually not part of the city, or were not part of the city. There's actually been some annexation since we first did this, and we'll be incorporating those changes to make sure. But at the end of this process, District 6 will be contiguous with all the land that is actually part of the city of Mesquite. We also narrowly tailor our plans to address any voting rights consideration. The Federal Voting Rights Act governs this process, and the Voting Rights Act is meant to protect minority participation and ability to elect in local elections, or in all elections, but in the local elections in this case. And so in drawing these districts, we are careful not to draw districts in a way that dilutes minority voting power. What that means generally is we have to make sure that we do not split concentrated minority populations so as to dilute those populations, or overly pack minority populations into a particular district, because that can have a dilutive effect too. In Mesquite, actually, the population is very diverse and is evenly distributed, so we were able to do that quite easily here. All right. Let's look at the next slide, which is the map. This is the proposed map, and I think everybody should have a copy of it. We have included behind that, for those who are interested, a copy of the demographic information for the proposed map that's been drawn. You'll see here, this sets out the total population, which you'll see is around that 25,000 number that I talked about, and within the 10% deviation. We have also given the Hispanic and African American portions of the population. This is all based on the 2010 census data. The federal law tells us that we're supposed to draw districts based on the most recent census data. In this case, that's 2010. The next census data is going to come out in 2020 or be available in 2021. And so one of the things, when you go to single member districts, you look every time the decennial census comes out, you reevaluate, you make sure that your districts are in balance and that you're complying with the other criteria that I talked about. So we have drawn this based on the 2010 data. Once we get new data in 2021, the city will reevaluate that and make sure there aren't any changes that need to be made based on any new data that comes out at that time. And at this point, I am going to, these are some guidelines for citizen comments, written comments, or plans if you want to submit one. Of course, we ask any comments to the best of your ability or plans be submitted in writing and be legible. We ask if you are able to show, sort of as we've provided the demographic information there, demographic and racial categories based on the 2010 census information. That information is available through the census. That just helps us make sure we can compare so that we're considering any potential voting rights implications of plans that are submitted. I will tell you, if that seems like a tough burden and you don't think you're able to obtain that information, if you submit a plan without that, it'll still be considered. We just ask if you're able to, that you do. The plans, any plans that a citizen submits needs to redistrict the whole city. Oftentimes we'll get folks who kind of focus on their own district and where they live, and they'll want to draw a single district. But unless we have the other districts to fit that into, we really can't do much with that. So we ask that if you're going to submit a map that you think is appropriate, that you go ahead and draw out to the best of your ability, redistrict the whole city. Of course, any plans submitted by the citizens should also conform to the same criteria that we've just talked about. We ask that any plans submitted just bear your name and address, and if possible, an email. That allows us to know who plans are coming from, and also allows us as consultants to get in touch with you if we need any additional information or to try to clarify any proposed plans with you. The plans or written comments can be submitted to the city secretary's office. There's a very helpful resource for those who want more information. The city has opened a redistricting website. It's available through the City of Mesquite website. It's got some great information in there just in terms of the process, some of the stuff I've talked about. Has all these criteria up here, has contact information for the city secretary's office, and so it's a very valuable resource for anybody who's looking for more information as part of this process. All right. As I said, the next steps, where we go from here, this is going to be our second public input meeting tonight, and then we'll have the November 5th council meeting, and if we are in a place where the council is ready to adopt, November 19th is the planned date for adoption, but that's a schedule that's flexible and at the council's discretion. All right, let's go back just to the map. We'll leave that up. And Mr. Mayor, I'll invite you back up if you'd like to open the public comment process. I'm going to stay up here. If anybody has any questions, I'm happy to respond to them to the best of my ability.
Thank you, Gunnar. Yeah, that's live now. I wanted to mention too, once the questions and everyone has finished their comments and questions tonight, we did this Tuesday night, we'll have each of the council member come up and take a few minutes just to address and say whatever's on their mind about this process as well. So we hope most of your questions are for Gunnar, but if they're for council, I'll do my best to answer them also. So at this time, don't all jump up and run, but anybody that has any questions or comments, we invite you to come up to the microphone. Yes, sir. And also, kind of like we do in council members, if you'll give your name and address, because this is being recorded, it kind of helps us too.
Jim Collins, 2500 Edwards Church Road. Really just have two comments. One is, I've lived in Mesquite for almost 40 years. We moved out to the Creek Crossing, our current address, and bought the land in 97, moved in 2000. Edwards Church Road was a 2-lane blacktop road at the time. And now I have a junior high school across the street from me and a high school at the end of the road. And because of that, it's really important to me that in all this planning, everything, you guys take into consideration coordination with the school board and coordination with the school boundaries and the attendance zones, because there was a period there, especially when the junior high was built, that the city council and the school board didn't talk to each other, and literally they opened up 2 middle schools in my area on 2-lane blacktop roads, and traffic is horrendous. And right now they've added 6th grade across the street from me. You can't get into my driveway when school lets out at 3:30, literally. There are so many people coming in, going into that school. They've put a multitude of portable buildings back there. You just can't get into my driveway. The second thing I wanted to bring up is, I know you're stuck with the 2010 attendance, but you look at the areas in Mesquite that are anticipating a lot of growth, a lot of planning, announcement of 900 new homes in one area, more than that in another area. Zone 6 is going to change substantially. I hope you all take that in consideration.
Thank you. And I can kind of address both of those issues, if you don't mind. The first issue is kind of interesting. I was actually talking to one of our school board members this morning, and we were talking about exactly that the school board and the council need to have more interaction on a regular basis. And both of us, and I think most of all of us, totally agree with that. You know, as the new school district lines have been drawn, the city council and the school district are totally separate entities. We really are. They get calls, things about us, and we get calls, things about them, and that happens a lot. But I think the synergy of working together more and looking at all that is very important. I will tell you in that one regard, as we began this process a few weeks ago, the city council members spent a lot of time doing kind of exactly that. We were looking at some of these boundaries up here, and that's kind of what we were talking about. Where are neighborhoods split? Because they bring a plan out that just simply looks at everything they talked about, population and all the different aspects. And they, although they run on major lines, we sat down and we had an opportunity, and I think the council did a tremendous job looking at some feeder patterns, which we're not really privy to feeder patterns particularly, but we know what areas go to elementaries and which go to junior highs. So we did some of that, and I think it was very, very, so know that we did that some initially. The second part of your question, I brought up Tuesday night, and I mentioned that several times. During my tenure on the council for 10 years, I think we did 2 redistricting exercises during that time. And so that's something that we will constantly be looking at in the city planning department, other areas, because you're exactly right, you know, and they say, well, how do you do that? Well, you get 10,000 people down south somewhere in the district, and the lines start moving, and you know, we start changing where we need to balance those back out. So we'll know in 2021, probably, I don't know, at the time of that election, I don't know exactly the timing of it, but there will be, I think, a hard look at that point if we get, to your point, 500 or 1,000 homes out there. Thank you for that question. Anyone else? Yes, ma'am. Name and address, please.
Rose Grimsley, 1713 Woodlawn Parkway. I have a question on the City of Mesquite proposed illustrative plan. It says that the deviation for District 3 is 4.38%, and the deviation for 1 is minus 3.74%. And that's still within your threshold?
Yes, ma'am, it is.
But it's, okay.
And again, so the 10%, we're going to have based on, when we put together these plans, we have to take kind of subsets of population and assign them one place or the other. And so by doing that, just based on the virtue of where people live, or just by virtue of where people live, you're gonna have some districts that tend to be just a little bit heavy, and then some districts that are just a little bit light. And so what we do to make sure we're in the 10% is we take the one that is the most light, and we look at the one that is the most heavy, and then we make sure that there's not a 10% difference between those.
And a little bit of that was done by what we were trying to keep some of these neighborhoods and school patterns together, because they were probably a lot closer to plus or minus 1 or 2%. So some of that's, if you want to say, our fault. Who else? Yes, sir. Come on up.
Hi, Min Nguyen, 3008 Casper Drive.
Thank you.
A question I have is, I think this has been addressed before, but since I've got you here, with the council members as of today, obviously in 19th is the next election, right? On November
yes.
2019. So everything is just, once you guys decide what that is, those are the only elections that matter. Like those 6 districts, right?
Well, all of them matter.
I mean, they all of course matter. I
No,
guess the
yes.
mayor does matter, right?
Well, and my point, yeah, that's true, thank you. The real point of that is, we are, I think you said it right, we are changing the political system here in Mesquite in the way that the political system runs in terms of elections. So the election process will be conducted differently. Whereas in the past, you went in, we had 4 races one year and 3 races the next year. And you voted for all of those races if you choose and wanted to vote for someone in each race. Today, in November, when you go in, with this new plan that was voted on and approved by you, our citizens, you will go in and you will basically have your district representation, 1, 2, 3, 4, however many people are running, and you will have the mayor. And that's the only 2 positions that you would be voting for in Mesquite.
How will they know, I'm sorry.
You'll have to come up. I'm trying to do that, I know.
How are you guys going to signify the residents which district they live in?
Basically, it'll be on the website, and then I'm assuming Dallas County will be on the vote. Yes, it'll be on the voting card. Like you'll get, I don't know if they'll necessarily send everybody a new card, but you will have a precinct, and the precinct will be geographical, and you know, it's just like today. If I want to, you know, most of you in this room, I know most all of you, and y'all stay up on these things, and you know who your representatives are in state and county and local. But sometimes when I want to see who represents a certain part of town, I'll go put an address in and do it online, and that'll be there. So that'll be one way for sure that you can look up. We're all kind of going through this together, and that's a great question and a comment, and I think as we get closer next year to that process, our pushing information out, pushing information in what the methods we have, not only social media, but our in-house communications, as well as, I mean, we all talk about the water bill, but not everybody gets a water bill. So we'll do our best to push that information out to you.
Mr. Mayor, the county should send out a new card for everybody as well.
One more question.
Come on up.
Sorry.
That's all right.
Since we're talking about splitting up, because are the precincts still the same, the voting precincts?
Yes.
And
County,
they're the same, but are there any split voting precincts?
there are some.
There are a few voting precincts that are split, and we had to do that just based on population numbers. Typically, after an election cycle or so, the county will come in and actually conform that to where they are no longer split. So the county, as I said earlier, the county is the one that sets the voting precincts, and once there's been a change like the city will be adopting here, the county will come back in and look at its precincts and kind of redraw them to, so they're no longer split.
One of the great opportunities in doing this a year in advance, just is besides giving everybody information, is that we'll be able to work through all these new and exciting times in Mesquite. Who else? I know you got more questions tonight. I always like to give everybody a chance. We do like to hear from our council members. I know that they're just dying to come up and visit and talk with you a little bit. I would mention too, most of you know, but just so you kind of know, our city manager's been down at It's been in Austin all week. Let's just leave it at that. And our Deputy City Manager, Jeff Jones, is here tonight. Thank you, Jeff, for being here. Ted, Jen, what's your official title these days? Managing Director of Financial Services here with us. Chris Sanchez, works in the City Manager's Department. Leah over here, which hides in the back. Leah Berger that works. Step out here. People can see you. Thank you, Leah. Wayne Larson, Marketing Director. Who am I missing? I saw somebody else come in. Okay. Going once. Yes, ma'am. Good. Come on up. Yes, thank you. I appreciate that.
I'll make this high. Michelle Circle, 631 Snapdragon. I'm just curious on how the new boundaries are going to affect current representation, on who our council person is now, and how that's going to affect it.
Okay. Has no effect. Nothing changes until November of next year. But now, November of next year, yes, the people, Mr. Casper, thank you for being here. Starting in November of next year, then it's based on these districts and who lives in these districts. Some of the council members, I can just say it this way. Right now, we have 4 of these districts that have members that live in them, not necessarily I think that's right, yeah, 4 of these districts have current council members. 2 of the districts, I believe it's 1 in 5, no one that's currently on the council lives in those districts. And then also, we have 1 council member terming off based on our elections as well. So we know we will have 3 new faces come November of next year, minimum of 3 new faces. We could have 7 new faces. Does that answer your question? A little bit? A little bit? Okay. Like I said, we want to make sure anybody, if you have a chance, you want to say anything, you're welcome. Come on up.
Since you brought it up,
Please.
could you go into the mechanics of how this is going to work? When we'll actually, if we're going to vote in November of 2019, new voter cards usually come out in January of 2020, so I'm not sure how that's going to work out. But but when would you, not that I'm going to, but when would you decide who's going to run for office and the campaign kickoff, and when do you have to register and all that kind of garbage?
It's great, yeah. It's great. That's a great question. The county, the state, anyway, there's set guidelines that back to, any precinct chairs here that's backed up. You want to just fill in what that cycle is? No?
Which part of the
Well, in terms of Mr. Nicolo, come to this microphone right here. Let Robert do it. There's a date and time specific today that we do this, and it's the same thing when the new cycle. It'll be the exact same time frames, weeks and months.
Yeah, that's a great question. For elections that occur in November, the Secretary of State has specific dates for when people would have to file, and then the ballots set usually about 3 months or so beforehand. So August, there's probably August filings or July, August filings. There are, in fact, several cities right now in Texas who elect their municipal leaders in November. Houston is the largest city in the in the state. So they have those specific dates, but those would be uniform throughout the state. So the same filing deadlines for Houston would be for us. You'd have filing, you'd have early vote periods of time, then you'd have an election. And something that hasn't been mentioned, there's a possibility that you would have a runoff. And so your runoff would occur, I think, probably the first week in December. And then you'd have a runoff, and then you'd have a canvassing probably about 10 or 11 days after that, where the current city council would meet, certify the results of any election, absent an election contest, and then you'd seat the new council. So your new council that would be voted on in 2019 would be seated in mid-December, if not earlier, of 2019. Does that answer those questions specifically? Okay. Does that help?
Oh, yeah, very much so.
All right.
I mean, today, we pick up packets in January, filing deadlines roughly the end of February, and then that's 60 days, actually it's a little less than 60 days prior to the May election. So those times would be consistent with the November 2nd. You can just back from there and see what that is. Yes, ma'am.
Rose Grimsley, 1713 Woodlawn. So I guess my concern is, more than a question, is that potentially we could have a new mayor and all new council people, no one potentially with experience in running a city. I don't know if other people have had this kind of a scary moment over that, but it concerns me greatly, and I'll let you guys comment and if people want to talk about it, but that bothers me a little bit as a citizen because, I don't even want to go there. I can't even, I mean, it probably won't happen, but it does worry me. It's kind of like when you send these new people to Austin and DC and they don't know what they do and they need their hands held for a little while. So anyway.
Thank you for your comment. We are here mostly to not talk about the process, but that's a possibility. I think the democratic process of our country is a great process. This is new for all of us, and I would encourage everyone to get behind what's been, I keep saying this over and over again, but I just continue to remind everyone, we're one of the greatest nations in this world, that we have a process that allows our citizens to come in and vote and talk and say what they would want. And agree, disagree, in May, we had changes to our system, and our system is what we have, and that's what we're going to do. And your concerns, I mean, some people are excited that there'd be 7 new people. Yes, somebody said exactly. I heard that. Yeah, that was Mr. Casper. And by the way, I didn't fail to mention a couple, and Mr. Casper has joined us, Councilman Casper. Our acting city attorney, Paul Anderson, in the back, and our newly hired city attorney, Mr. Pascal, joined us, and so I wanted to recognize them as well. So, but really the process is kind of what we're here to discuss, and not that those aren't valid concerns, but I tell you what, get behind who you like, get them elected, right, Mr. Archer? That's what we need to do. So that's what, anybody else? I'll give you a chance in a second. We'll get all of you guys up here. A question? All right.
Everybody else has to go to the mic.
Oh, yeah, you have to do it from the mic.
My question, and I don't know who could answer this. All right, Tandy Burrows, 1015 Majors Drive, Mesquite, Texas, 75149. My question is, if a person wants to run for a district, how long do they have to live in that district before they can run?
I believe it's 120 days.
That's correct. That's set out by the chart.
120 days.
Okay, thank you.
I had one right, Mr. Nicholas.
And it did not change.
It did not change. That's a good point. That was not changed during the election cycle. So y'all can figure that up from November, whatever the first Tuesday in November in 2019 is, back it up 120 days, got to have residence established. Come on to the mic.
Let's have some fun. I want to do 2 questions too. Men, according to, I already said it, 308 Casper. Yeah. According to, are we going to be, the city, first of all, thank you for doing this. I love it that Mesquite's being very transparent and all this. And part of the transparency is, once we set those dates, a lot of that date is mandated by law, but like residency, challenging residency, will that all be on the city website?
Oh, yes. Oh, yeah.
To
We'll
figure out
provide that.
any
Yes, sir.
problems with that?
Yeah, we'll provide that. That's what we need. We need the input, and lots of uncertainty. It's a new system that I don't guess any of us in this room have been through. Maybe some if you moved here recently from another city, but change sometimes is hard. A lot of us don't like change. I encourage you to. You may not want to embrace the new ways that things will be done, but we will have excellent representation. I've done this a long time, and the people that step up to run, those that are elected and those that aren't, do it because they want to help our city. And I think that we'll continue to see that in the upcoming election. Okay. Going. Yes, ma'am. All right, please. Start counting down from 10. Name and address, please.
Julie Shelton, 631 Snapdragon. So what happens if there's a district and nobody runs? Is it just left unfilled?
No, ma'am. The council will appoint someone if that were to occur.
Awesome.
So we would try our best not.
And from that district.
Oh, yeah, they have to live in the district. Yeah, they will have to be in that district. And I encourage you to get out, talk to all your friends once this is set up. Let's get some people involved in our city. Let's get them running. We want as many. Come on back up, Michelle.
Julie Shelton,
No,
631
we got it,
Snapdragon.
we got it. Julie.
So you would have to find somebody who lives in that district. What criteria have y'all established any criteria or anything?
No, the only real, it's the same thing as running. Your only criteria to run for office is that you live, no, it's, am I wrong?
And you have a year's residence in the city, 120 and.
1 year in the city.
And 120 days in the district that you would be in. And I think that you couldn't have a disability for serving, such as, being in prison, for example. Well, and I know, I mean, that's.
Right.
Legally, you have to be a U.S. citizen.
18 years old.
Yes,
So your standard qualifications for most political?
Yes.
Correct.
Okay,
and that's set by state law.
Correct.
okay, thank you.
We hope we don't get to that. I know I'm still looking. Please, all of our information is out there. Call us, email us, tag us on Facebook. I know that's the fun thing, but let us know, because this is all new. And with that, I'd like to give the council, as we did before, a chance to come up and share. And you want to start tonight, Mr. Archer? Come on up.
Well, thank you, Mayor. First, I want to say, Mayor, I appreciate you not calling on me to explain all that election criteria a while ago that Mr. Miklos gave to us. So, yes, thank you very much for that. Really delighted tonight to see so many faces. We didn't have a lot Tuesday night, but we also had some pretty rough weather up on the north side. So, really happy to see people who truly care about their city. When we started this whole process, it was, as you've said, Mayor, it's very something different. Actually, I've said many times, this is a very historic process for Mesquite, Texas. We are doing something very, very new, bold, and different in terms of changing our entire electoral process. When we started this process, some of us were more inclined to push this because we thought term limits would be important. Some thought that single-member districts would be more important. Some didn't want to do any of this. But we had tremendous debate. We had tremendous, great discussions. And as it turned out, the people said we'll have term limits and single-member districts and a few other things. So the people always gets to have the last say. So regarding what we're here tonight for is single-member districts, here's what, regardless of whether you think it was a good idea or a bad idea, here's what I'll just share that my vision is in terms of how to make this a great success for the people of Mesquite. And that is, what will your expectations be of your newly elected district officials who will be now representing truly a specific geographical area? We right now have 4 districts that represent geographical areas, but it's really more of a residency requirement that we have to meet within those 4 districts, but the whole city votes for everyone, for all 6 council members. So really we've been at large all these years in a sense. So it's your expectations. The first expectations I would say to have is make sure that you have that you set the bar high for your future district council members, that you will not accept things like stagnancy, complacency, just attending meetings and that's about it. Have a high standard when it comes to the fact that to move a city like Mesquite forward with all of our challenges and opportunities, it takes tremendous proactive and hands-on leadership by elected officials. And so have a high expectation that your district council member will be having regular town hall meetings throughout your district, that they'll be out in every neighborhood throughout the district. And that can be done oftentimes with just a few hours a week. You don't have to do it all at once. But a district council member ought to know their district well, and now we'll have much more manageable districts to manage and oversee. So you will be able to get around a lot more. You ought to see your council member out knocking doors a little bit just to kind of survey and see how things are going. Doing a neighborhood cleanup or a trash pickup or getting your hands dirty and letting your constituents be out there with you, all working together. Those aspects of hands-on leadership is so very, very important, and it'll inspire constituents to want to get involved, because I see in this process, honestly, future council members being not so much just a business person or someone that's got a strong social standing in the city, which is kind of where we've been in the past in many ways. I see future crime watch leaders, neighborhood organizers, people who are really out there in the grassroots of making things better for the neighborhoods and for the town as your future council members. I think that'll be a good thing. So some have said, well, this will create some turf wars and infighting. Well, here's the expectation I encourage you to have when it comes to that. I just mentioned have a high expectation of hard work and involvement by your council members. Well, also have a high expectation that we would all be working together, or the future council members would all be working together, hand in hand, partnering. You know, right now, many of us help each other with neighborhood cleanups or other things. Some of us may have an event in our district plan and something comes up, so we ask our colleague, hey, could you fill in for me that night? We need to continue that and get better at that, and expect all the council to work together to help each other in each other's districts. And all that work that we're doing in the district, when we come back and have to make decisions about budgets and policies, we'll make so much better decisions because of our involvement and our knowing what's really going on with the people that we serve and look after. So that's my vision. I'm excited about this, and let's get a lot done for Mesquite.
Yeah, I'm not gonna, and I appreciate all that, Councilman. I'm not going to go too much in depth on it. Just like on Tuesday, I'll say a few things, and then I just want to ask a main question because I feel like that it's important for us who are going to vote on these plans to hear from you. So I want to say a few things first. The other day on Facebook, somebody had posted a thing about a septic system and the sewer overflowing. Did y'all see that? Did y'all see that? Well, it was pretty gross, and it was a neighbor who was complaining about that. And I mean, I'm at work and I take a break and I look at stuff, and you know, this was not in the area that I currently represent, or where if I were to run again, it would be in that district. And you could say, well, you know, these guys aren't going to care about anywhere other than their districts. But I mean, I got on that immediately. And to the city's credit, Jeff, thank you very much. The city had water department and health out there in about 25 minutes. From Facebook to someone knocking on the door and trying to fix it, take care of it in 25 minutes. And I'm not saying that to go, you know, me, or anything like that. I'm just saying as an example, I can't speak for everyone. I can speak for myself. Every part of the city is important, and important to me. And right now, every street, every alley, every house, every citizen is of a concern. And it'll continue to be that way. And what I believe and I hope will happen is that regardless of a council person being elected in a particular district, that we'll all, number one, keep in mind what's best for the entire city, and number two, we're going to chip in and help. You know, somebody's, you know, on vacation or on a break or something, or just the other person gets a call. Oh, I knew this guy. We work together. They got a call. That we're all going to be working together. Because there is no benefit in those turf wars or factionalism that would occur, because you know, you might get the upper hand today and then get smushed next week. And so it makes way more sense, and what I hope and what I would encourage the next council to do is to all work together. No turfs, just areas where we concentrate on and do better. And that's me. I'm speaking for myself, but I have a pretty good idea the rest of the council shares my opinion on that. So let me ask y'all, that was my talk. Let me ask y'all, and please come up to the mic, how do y'all want the council after November 2019 to work together and to not do? What do you want us to, or whoever gets elected then, to avoid, to do differently? What do you want to see from a council that's elected from single-member districts? Does that make sense with the question I asked? What do you want to see? What do you not want to see? How do you want it to work? Jim, do you have any ideas? Come on.
The biggest concern I had with this change, and I'll tell you right up front, I voted against it,
Yes, sir.
is ward politics. I didn't want to see that. The city has to pull together. And we're all harnessed to the same wagon. We all need to pull together. We don't need to be a dog sled team, which everybody's on a separate thing. They're all running over this way and that way. We all need to pull together. The mayor, Stan, he doesn't need to be herding cats. It needs to be a coordinated effort. And even though you guys represent individual districts, this city has to grow as a group and together. I'm not sure it has in the past. There's been issues, but that's the only way we're going to make this a place where my kids will kind of back and live here again. They don't want to live here now, but we've got to do that. And then the only way we can do it is we work together.
Yes, sir. I think the analogy is if only one person's rowing in the boat, it's just going to go in circles, right? Absolutely. Who else? Debbie?
Yeah, Debbie Morgan, 223 East Kimbrough, 75149. I want to say I know everybody has their own ideas of county, state, national politics, but I want to see the municipal remain as nonpartisan as possible.
I appreciate that. Yes, sir.
Top of the evening to you, Mr. Nicholas.
You too.
My name is Henry Brown, 211 Alta Drive, here in Mesquite. My ideal for the council is kind of similar to Debbie's. I would love to see this council be as nonpartisan as possible. I would love to see the future council to have respect one for the other. As far as the turf wars, I think they should be a thing of the past. I'm not saying that it happens a lot out here, but in Dallas County, this is part of Dallas County. We have witnessed a lot of turf wars going on in Dallas County. But we need to make sure that we just have that respect for each council, particular district. And I do feel like this is very historical. Like Mr. Archer says, it's very historical, and I'm just so happy. I don't even know I don't know what to do. I'm just so happy about this whole notion of single-member districts, and that's just what I want to say. Thank you guys very much for working real hard. Thank the voters of Mesquite for allowing this to take place, and thank you very much, sir.
Yes, sir. Rose?
They know I'm not shy.
Yes.
Well, I agree with everybody so far. In the beginning, I was opposed to this and I did not vote for it, but the more I have thought about it over the last month or so that I've investigated it, the more I'm thinking that this might be definitely good for Mesquite because each area will have someone dedicated to them. And one of my criteria for a good councilman is visibility. Visibility at neighborhood watch meetings, doing things in the community, availability. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am. It's all good comments. Anyone else?
I'm Frank McGee. I reside at 726 Darnell. I think the best way I can sum up my feelings about the future for this redistricting is this. You're going to have, what, 6, possibly 7 representing a district. You represent your people that are in that district, but you work together as a team for the city of Mesquite.
Yes, sir.
That's it.
Yes,
And
sir.
I'll be watching.
Please.
Hi, I'm Debbie. I live on Horseshoe Bend. Been a resident of Mesquite for 30-something years. I guess the first thing when nobody was here and you guys were here, the first thing I said, I don't want to us and them.
Mm-hmm.
I want to totally us. And that's my big thing, because I'm sick and tired of the political stance that's going on now. I'm sick and tired of, we're better than you and you can't do this. And, we're all Americans, my God, first, Well, for me, I'm always saying I'm a Texan first and an American second. But anyway, that being said, for the city council, my vision, I'm hoping one of these days somebody's going to actually look outside the box. And, I've driven through East Dallas and I've driven through all that and saw the blight of all that. However, they have all been able to change. They have all been able to bring, the arts, the beauty back into a neighborhood. And that's what I'm hoping. One of these days, Mesquite's finally going to do that. Because if, the Arts District and Bishop and, all this stuff that goes on. I drove around for the first time over in the village where I lived after I graduated. And I'm like, oh my God, whoever thought how beautiful the landscaping is, how beautiful the new facilities are that are there. I'm sick of being in Mesquite and it's all Jack in the Box and, McDonald's and where is the incentive to get, homegrown cooking here? Because anytime anybody ever travels, you don't want to eat at McDonald's, you don't want to eat at Denny's, you want to eat what the locals eat and what Mesquite would have to offer for people. I don't care if it's barbecue for, I'd love for us to be just kind of like Austin maybe, but that's what I'm saying. There's just no vision that I've seen over these 30 years that somebody wants to step up and look outside the box. They may be there, I don't know, but I haven't seen it yet. And that's like one of the things I'd like for the forward so we can have the young people stay. Let's look at something different, So anyway, that's my 2 cents.
Thank you. Thank you. Who else?
Thanks, Councilman Nicolo, for asking the question. I, for one, am one of those young people that came back. I'm not as young now, but I came back in 2000 after leaving and growing up and graduating from Poteet in 91. And I think the one thing about these single-member districts that's going to do, it's going to bring people to think outside the boxes. You're going to see a little bit I think you're going to see different council people. It's not going to be the same old crew, kind of like what Councilman Archer said. I think because the districts are different, even though they're broken up very well done. I know it's going to change in 21, but it's still pretty well done. I think we will change. I think the city has changed, and this is one way for you to get new leadership and new blood into it. And of course, I think we all can work together, but that doesn't mean disagreements don't come up. And if you can have the respect on these disagreements, if you have a strong advocate for your district, it's going to help the rest of the other councilmen see your side. No, we're not going to agree on everything. I, for one, live in District 2, in the corner up there to the right, or 3? 3. I love my district. We have good streets. Palos Verdes is a great park. But driving here, I remember how big Mesquite is. It took me 20 minutes to get here. And you see different parts of the city, and one of the things about having council people in different parts of the city is we can get some of the things in some of the better parts of the district to say, moved around, and then you can actually, like we've all said, we can voice to our council person any problems we have, and they can be an advocate for us on the council, and I think if we elect good people, they'll be able to work together. So I am very much in favor of this. I did vote for this because of this, and I'm happy that it happened. I'm glad the process as well. As you can see, our map, we talk about gerrymandering all the time in national politics. This is not a gerrymandered map. This is a well-done map, and I think, of course, there'll be some tweaks and stuff that you guys will bring up and the citizens will see. But I think as a good base, this is not a bad map, and I advocate for a map to look similar to this or even this.
Anybody else? All right. Well, I'll just close by saying I appreciate what everybody said. Vision, absolutely. Vision comes first from listening and listening to hear what people say, not listening to then not hear what they say, but formulating what you want to say. I hear you when you say you want a vision for the future. I hear what y'all say about us working together, us pulling not just one oar going in a circle around and round and round, digging in deep for our districts, being visible, talking to everybody, advocating but not breaking down into factionalism or fighting. Vision starts first with hearing, really hearing what people want and moving forward. So I appreciate that. Now I'll turn it over. Thank you.
It won't get feedback? Okay, we're just so awkwardly far away. I appreciate the chance to speak, and I appreciate you guys coming out and being able to hear your thoughts and your questions, and I'm going to go back and watch the part I missed. But we also had a great conversation Tuesday. Now, there were only 3 people that came out, but we heard a lot of the same concerns about this redistricting process. And did Councilman O'Shea stop by? Well, he and I both had a listening tour around this community when we started talking about the charter reforms. And we had 6 different meetings all over town. We had a lot of you guys came out and spoke and either were advocating for or against some of these reforms that the voters ended up approving overwhelmingly. And I'm a big fan of redistricting. I'm a big fan of this process. And I think a lot of that comes from my perspective that our civic democracy right now is, in my opinion, broken. When I first ran, we had 2,000 people voting. And the reason I did run is because I observed, in my opinion, factions on the council that were existing then. And that was an at-large voting system. And I didn't think that was real healthy. And so what I think this allows us to do is create neighborhood accountability of our elected officials. Folks you're going to bump into on the sidewalk or at the grocery store, and you're going to be able to say, hey, I didn't appreciate that vote you took Monday night. All right? You can hold them accountable right then and there. And from my perspective, as somebody who was a brand new candidate, it seemed overwhelming to run against somebody who was a name in the community, a business name, who I knew was going to get the police and fire endorsements and some good donations that come with that. And I knew that if I was going to be competitive, I was going to have to raise 12 grand. Well, I'm a school teacher, right? I don't have that. And so one of the other things this allows us to do is cut the cost of actually thinking about running by 6, right? And so I'm sure some of you guys can talk about your experience. We've had folks spend $30,000, $40,000 on some of these races, right? And you as a neighborhood watch leader, you can't compete with some of the attorneys' money or police and fire if you don't get their endorsement, but you might have great ideas from what you've observed in your neighborhood. And the fact that you can go out and you can knock 200-300 doors of folks who you know are going to actually participate because you see them every day, I think that makes it a lot more accountable. Now, that is not to say that there isn't cons to the system. You've probably observed in other communities single-member districts having some big negative effects. Just across the pond, right? In Dallas, you probably observed some things that didn't work really well. And so some of the caution that I would say is when you start seeing council members ask for staff dedicated to them, that should be a big neon sign, a big red flag, in my opinion. When we start saying, you can't bring a public hearing for a zoning case forward unless you get my approval first in my district. When you start hearing that pronoun, my, I feel like we should step back and say, whoa, whoa, whoa. That's a problem. Every policy any council takes in the future will still need 4 votes, right? And I'm somebody who, I might have a reputation for being a person who likes confrontation. I don't. I'd rather we all voted and got along and were happy. But I also think that tension and conflict is okay. And I think that having some tension, if it's healthy, gets us to a better result at the end, a better debate, a healthy debate. And that diversity of opinion, I think, is really important for a governing or legislative body to have. And the reason I ran is because I didn't see that enough. I didn't hear enough critical questions. And so I think this is going to be a big part of that process if we make it. And that's true for any form of democracy. The inputs are going to lead to the outputs. And in my opinion, in our city, we had some broken inputs. We don't have enough registered voters. We don't have enough participation in these elections at all, whether we move to single-member districts or not. And so by making it accountable to your neighborhood, by reducing the barriers for you to think about running, I think is all going to be really healthy. And we're still going to have 4 votes. And so hopefully that reduces some of what I heard on my speaking tour or listening tour. You guys were speaking. Some of the comments and concerns I heard. The other concerns I heard very often were about districts of opportunity for people of color. And there was a lot of conversation about whether redistricting or single-member districts was about creating special pockets so that we can guarantee representation that was Latino or Asian or African American. Mesquite saw a big population boom after the banks and the government was doing redlining. We don't have pockets of cohesive diversity, or I guess cohesive ethnicity, minorities in certain neighborhoods. We don't have those kind of neighborhoods in Mesquite. And so redistricting was never about creating a guaranteed victory for a Latino or African American candidate, in my opinion. Now, everybody had their own reason for voting. But what it does do is it does break up the existing electorate into 6 pieces. And it says that we can't have the same voters choosing all the candidates every time. And if we continue to do what we've always done, we're going to always get what we've always got. And in my book, it's a joke that I don't have a female colleague. I think it's a travesty that in 166 years of Mesquite, we've never had an African American city council member. I don't think that's reflective of our values, and I don't think that's reflective of Mesquite then or now. And so I do think that by reducing the barriers, by reducing the cost of running for council from, say, $12,000 down to $2,000, well, more school teachers can do that. More soccer moms can do that. More middle-class people can do it. And so tonight isn't about why redistricting is good or bad. The voters have overwhelmingly approved it. We got to do it, right? It's been approved. But what this is about is, I think, going into our neighborhoods and maybe squashing some of the concerns that we hear about, well, this is doomed from the beginning. This is going to be just like Dallas. This is going to be a faulty process. Well, I reject that. Democracy is what we put into it. And if we come out and we're excited and we talk to our neighbors and we say, hey, you would be great on city council. The mayor talked about we have 3 open seats, right? We're going to have 4. I've already said I'm not running, right? So we have to get candidates in these districts. We have to find good candidates who are our neighbors, who are our friends, from our faith community, from our civic organization, from the Elk Lodge, wherever it is. Because we have to have a council who's going to be reflective of Mesquite's values. So thanks, Mayor, for letting me share that. And who's up now? There you go.
Well, thank you for, it's much better to have a lot of people show up. That's the reason we have these meetings, so that the citizens can voice their opinions and let us know what you want. From the very beginning, I'll tell you, I was not for term limits. I was not for redistricting. I thought the way we had it was fine. But I did say that when I ran, I was going to listen to the citizens that supported me and elected me. So we had the committees, the Citizens Committee, that had 6 or 7 different meetings. And they came to the council and said, when they got all their information together after having their meetings, they said, this is what the citizens want. This is what the committee says. And listening to the people that came to the meetings, they want this on there. So it was put on the ballots. And the citizens voted for it. The citizens are who elected me. So if that's what the citizens want, then that's what we did. So now we have to make it the best system that we can make it. And I do believe, I said Tuesday night, anybody that runs in any one of these districts has to know in their mind that every vote you make is going to affect the whole city. So we all, whoever is elected, has to work together, just like we're doing now. We can't let single-member districts and what's happening in Dallas and all that, we cannot, just like y'all said earlier, we cannot let that happen in Mesquite. We are going to have to continue as a group, whoever's elected, to work together to make the best decisions for this city.
I've heard a lot of great comments tonight, and it's all been really good. And I like the fact that we're moving into this in a positive manner, not negative, but positive. I appreciate what Councilman Casper said, because that is right. We have to go after together what is right for our entire city. I represent District 4. I cannot presume that I'm going to be in the next term. I've got to work at it, and I realize that. Just as every one of our councilmen have to do the very same thing. I heard earlier about we cannot allow ourselves to get apathetic, mediocre. We cannot allow ourselves to get lukewarm. We can't get into a neutral and just coast. There's too much happening, and there's too much to do. Our city has changed dramatically, and I love it. I am a third generation Mexican American. I'm proud of my heritage, and I'm proud that we're Americans together. And yeah, our city is very diverse now, and we should be looking forward to change. I'm looking forward to change. And as you remember in our system before, I would have to go look for votes up there off of La Prada, off of Oates. When I'm down here in the South End, who are the voters up there that I can count on to vote for me? This will make the new councilmen, the new council people, to really work their districts and engage. I heard I think I heard that word the other night from Councilman Noche, and that's right. We've got to engage more and more. So then the area that I'm in, I'm looking down I-20 over there into Kaufman County. And I have to be involved with these constituents. Every one of us have to be involved in the areas that we're in right now. So we've got our work cut out for us. Doesn't stop here tonight. They're encouraging you, and the consultants have done a great job, and they're going at this by population and by precincts and by the schools and all this, that we've all worked together to see what that design is and what that configuration is and what it looks like. And so it's not done yet. Then we take the next step on the time frame, keep moving forward. But I sure do like it where it says, "Behold how good and pleasant it is to see brethren dwell together in unity." And that's what we have to continue to move towards, unity. And then to have the promise, that's where God's going to command his blessing. And we want our city to continue to be blessed. So thank you all for being here tonight and your input and your concerns, because we're all in this together. And we're going to keep moving forward. A lot to be done. Thank you, Mayor. Appreciate it.
Thank you. It's great to hear from your council. I don't know if you pick up on this, but these men are passionate about Mesquite, Texas, and about you. And I think that's if you can't take away anything else tonight from what we've talked about, you know that the men currently that represent you, and we hope women soon, I agree with you, that they will continue to do that, and I think they will. You know, I heard the word vision tonight, and I think I think that's key. You know, we've got to look. I talked a lot in the past about our children. I heard that a little bit tonight, and I think man mentioned coming back. You know, a lot of our children don't live here. A lot of them have left. The things that they're looking for, the things that they want in a lifestyle, we don't necessarily have those things. And some, you know, we would say, well, we'll just build these new neighborhoods. But what about the ones we have today? You know, what about our neighborhoods? What about the connectivity to our neighborhoods? The connectivity to the things we have today? You know, we are a very strong faith-based community, and you can't say that about all cities, but I think Mesquite, I can say that. What's the connectivity to the churches? What's the connectivity to the malls? What's the connectivity to one another? One of the things that I see a lot right now as we're talking to developers, probably almost monthly, about building in Mesquite, is not many of them are putting their garages in the back anymore. All the new developers, most of the new developments are going with garages out front. Now, I will tell you that one of the reasons is cost, but I'll tell you that another reason that we talk about is, guess what? When you park in the front of your house and everybody parks out front, there's not a fence dividing you. You get to see your neighbors coming in and out. I grew up that way. Anybody else grow up that way? You know, we used to go wave to everybody and see them right. And then what happened when I got married and moved back, moved here to Mesquite? I say back, I've been here my whole life. I moved into a house with the fence next to the neighbor's fence, next to the neighbor's fence. And you didn't see them unless you went out and got your mail. So I think you're seeing that shift and that change, and we want to be part of that. And, change sometimes is an ugly word. Change is a four-letter word sometimes. But the reality is we want things to be new and better and great. I want my grandkids to want to come back here and live here. I'll tell you right now, I've got them from 1-year-old to 7-year-old, and I want those kids to want to live here when they decide where they want to be. So I think that's important. It's late. It's hot in here. I know y'all are all going, yes, I'm burning up. Thank y'all. Thank you so much for coming. I know not necessarily a lot of questions and all that. This is a huge amount of information to take in. It really is. Go to the website, citymesquite.com/redistricting. Call the city secretary. They love me telling y'all that. But call the city secretary's office and ask them questions. Submit things. I had somebody Tuesday night, well, what if I just have some comments? Call Sonia and Susan and the girls and the ladies in the city secretary office and say, how do I submit a comment? Send them to us. We want to hear from you. And I mentioned before, everybody's got contact information. Let us know. Okay. Thanks again. Maybe it won't rain tomorrow. Y'all have a good evening. Thank you very much for being here.